Germany has never been in such a miserable state as it is now. Bankruptcy. The declaration of state bankruptcy. And if they don't change attitude about Russia, nothing will be fixed.
Can the Alternative for Germany party eventually become a driving force in the near future?
It can and should be. In Germany, there are lots of illegal refugees. Some people say we can't round them up. How come? You pay them.
They come to get benefits, catch them if you want.
Zvezda Holding presents Dynamic Spectrum Talks now.
Hello, dear friends. This is Dynamic Spectrum Talk podcast, a place where we meet interesting people from all over the world, look for common ground and try to rediscover each other. Today, peoples and nations are seriously influenced by information noise and propaganda. But I think we successfully fight this trend and build bridges between representatives of different cultures, countries and regions. Recently in our program, we had a lot of guests from the field of culture and music, and we've also learned ethno-cultural flavor through languages. However, today I propose to shift the focus to current socio-political events and international relations. That's why, for the second time, we invited to our studio Waldemar Herdt, chairman of the International Council of Russian Germans and former member of the Bundestag from the Alternative for Germany party. Waldemar, I'm glad that you are with us again today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Waldemar, let's get right off the bat and continue probably from the moment we've concluded our previous conversation. Let me remind you, it was the autumn of the last year, quite a long time ago. And I remember you were telling in detail that a significant part of your activities here in Russia is to help Europeans, primarily German business, to relocate to Russia, as well as to assist to those people, your colleagues and ordinary Germans, maybe even Russian Germans, former Soviet Germans, who would like to connect their future with our country, to somehow return to Russia and to gain a foothold here. All this is happening as a follow-up to Decree 702 of the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, which states that citizens, representatives of countries that feel united with the traditional values that Russia preserves, and who, according to these beliefs, are under pressure in their own countries of their original citizenship, can get support and use simplified option to move to Russia. Please tell us what specific steps have been already taken. Is there any progress, reasons to be proud?
Well, of course. I don't even remember the last time we met, probably a year ago or 6
Last
months
fall,
ago.
quite a long time ago.
A lot has happened during this time. Unfortunately, in the territories where our people live, the changes are not for the better, but for the worse. The situation is becoming more complicated and increasingly unacceptable to the majority of the people I represent. Russian Germans are mostly conservatively educated people. These are large families, hard-working, law-abiding citizens, which is generally out of favor in the European Union now. That's why we keep working on this. I was just in Rostov-on-Don, where we launched a new house-building plant. Well, a workshop for the production of glampings and houses, and it's a very wonderful company, built in German way. This is a former hangar. And now people go to it like to a museum to see how to organize workplaces so that, for example, they don't have to carry a saw behind them and it follows the rail instead.
In other words, there is a transfer of German technology to Russian soil.
Technologies and the production culture itself. You can see people are happy there. They enjoy working in such conditions where they are taken care of, so that their backs are not bent or stressed or heavy. and it's very valuable now. Another company is located in a city not far from Moscow. Kolomnskaya, isn't it?
The town of Kolomna.
Yes, Kolomna. We are still in the launch completion stage there. I also know other cases. Altai Mountains, for example, a wonderful project, fully developed and outlined. Umonskaya Sloboda, in a very beautiful place in the Altai Mountains. There are 2 or 3 German families who have been living and settling in for years, and we are coming very close to the implementation of this project. It will be a cultural and recreation complex that will accommodate both people from abroad and Russians who can relax and improve their health, and someone may stay there to live and work at an agricultural enterprise. We are currently working on opening a brewery there. A local German asked us to help him move to a place where his 300 years of family experience in brewing would be in demand, and many other positive aspects. The Decree 702 is a wonderful message. In general, it once again confirmed my statement, which I always repeat, that Russia is an ark, the ark of humanity, where people will gather. I don't want to justify it too religiously, but in fact, traditional universal human values are inherent in all religions, in general, and all normal philosophies, except LGBTQ+. And except all this Satanism, which is now being propagated in another part of the world. Therefore, people fleeing from Satanism will settle down where they can calmly and normally raise their children. Decree 702, in my opinion, has not yet begun to actively manifest itself. I looked at the statistics. It's 1,300 families. It's basically nothing.
It does not manifest itself because the mechanism for its implementation has not yet been created, or people are simply unaware of it.
Both of it. First of all, the decree itself is wonderful because for the first time the reason for the move is indicated. These are value indicators. Not economic or any other values, but the values that this family lives by. It is wonderful. There are, of course, some disadvantages. People are guaranteed to stay in Russia for only 3 months, and, of course, there is no turning back for those who are going to move. They are stigmatized in their native countries, fired from their jobs, bank accounts are closed. So the ambient immediately created there, in general, is unfriendly to those who decided to take this step. And when a person looks at the situation around them, and then looks at what is written in the decree about 3 months of guaranteed stay, and the person asks themselves, what if I don't pass? And then where should I go?
Actually, 3 months is a very limited period.
I don't really understand why it's just 3 months. Yes, I see that this is the job of the security service, and the regulation obliges them to check each person for safety in the country where they have arrived. Russia is no exception. The order here is the same as in other countries. But the deadline is too short, and this has to be explained. Don't worry, we'll give you a hand. We'll take you through all these bureaucratic floors, and in fact, the registration will take even less than 3 months. But these are words, and what they read is something completely different. It's about that they are not allowed to work for these 3 months, but they have to live somewhere, and they have to eat something. This is quite an obstacle, and deciding to move is a very serious step. You're reshaping your life, breaking all ties. Moving from one city to another is already like a wildfire for many. And here, from one country to another, a one-way ticket. So this step is a very serious decision. And when this decision is still accompanied by some doubts and fears, it is very difficult to make. Our task, first of all, is to dispel these doubts and fears. We have created a clear system of simplified cross-border movement of both businesses and people. We take people by the hand and guide them through all these stages. Now we have built a system together with our partner Etnomir. This is such an interesting project not far from Moscow, which is ready to host migrants for the first time. There are hotels, there is a social center, and a nearby public facilities. This is a project in the Kaluga region. I really like the statement of the Kaluga governor that we need to revive the hospitality industry, which has suffered a bit due to, let's say, the uncontrolled migrant workers' arrival. Yes, we need to revive it, because, in my opinion, this feature is in the spirit of the Russian people. Hospitality have always been and still endures among ordinary people. It's just visible and audible. By the way, a delegation of businessmen was here not so long ago. We traveled around the country, also visited Kaluga, Tver, Moscow. I wasn't with them, they went with my people. And Russian hospitality and openness simply amazed them. So, the hospitality industry, where does it start? The family arrived and got off at Vnukovo airport.
Someone met them. Or didn't meet.
And they have a question. Where should we go? We have the Decree 702. We came by it, but this does not exempt you from all registration and medical examination procedures. On the contrary, it should be done, and done quickly. Someone can do it, for example, the Russian Germans. This year, I think that the rest of those people who had Russian citizenship have almost all left for Russia. And they have a question. Where should we go? We have the Decree 702, we came by it, but this does not exempt you from all registration medical examination procedures. On the contrary, it should be done, and done quickly. Someone can do it, for example, the Russian Germans. This year, I think that the rest of those people who had Russian citizenship have almost all left for Russia. Now there are those who have nothing to do with Russia and have never had Russian citizenship.
You just said there is a request not only from the Germans, who once had a Russian or Soviet citizenship, but from those wishing to move to Russia from countries neighboring to Germany. So, according to your estimates, how many people can we talk about? Hypothetically.
These include Germans who were deported to Kazakhstan during the Soviet era, as well as all the others. To the date, we have more requests from Italians, French, Dutch and Germans from Germany than from our people. Well, by our people, I mean the Russian Germans. They've already made up their minds. And now Germans from Germany are coming to the point where they need to move. There are a lot of forecasts. In general, we remain on our forecast of 2.5 million people within 3 years. It is for them that we must create conditions for unhindered border crossing.
2.5 million people. As far as I understand, the main portion of it is from Germany.
Yes, the main part. Due to the fact the most are Russian Germans.
Russian Germans, yes.
Their main reason is values. We know that the boors, the old believers are coming, and this shift took place at a time when Russia was not yet so clearly positioning itself precisely as a conservative value defender. Now this position exists. In my opinion, Russia is the only state that protects this way of life legally. When I raised this issue in the Bundestag and we talked to other countries, they said, why should we care? We don't have this problem. Well, yes, 30 years ago this problem did not exist. But it was not legally confirmed, and in 30 years there has been a complete upheaval. a flip in the opposite direction. And now we see that ideology becoming dominant. It is the most protected, subsidized by the state and so on. That's so that such flips don't happen, because there will always be attempts to go this way. In my opinion, Russia has done the right thing by protecting traditional values in a legislative manner. Of course, there are other points, either faith, religion, ethics, philosophy, something that in general should guard the traditional way of life. But due to the fact that they believe we don't need to be protected, we are normal, it turned out that the world now has begun to split on this principle. I think this is one of the reasons for this conflict in Ukraine. Yes, there are raw materials, elements of nationalism and territorial security issues among the reasons. But in reality, there is a war going on between two ideological machines and programs. On one hand, it is the conservative way of life that has allowed humanity to survive to this day. On the other hand, there is the lifestyle promoted by the European Union. You won't get subsidies if you don't allow pride parades. How on earth are the Pride Parade and industry and welfare are connected? However, they connect them.
Indeed, a package decision is being made. In order to receive some benefits or claim something, it is necessary to imply a certain ideological construct wherever possible. I agree with you, it's a vicious circle. While a conservative approach, protective in a good way, allows you not to blur yourself, not to experiment on you. And in this case, an experiment with very unclear possible outcomes. Most likely, the consequences will be very devastating. Well, Waldemar, let's round up the topic of the Russian Germans a bit. In the previous program, we've touched the fact that, relatively speaking, the homeland of all Russian Germans is the Volga region, due to well-known historical events. Few people are living there now. But those who return to Russia, or consider it, which regions do they opt for first of all? Are they trying to return to where they came from, the Volga region, or to where they will be able to settle?
This is a very interesting question. And we asked ourselves this question. 2.5 years ago, we conducted a short survey through our channels, because I was also interested in understanding which regions are prioritized. There was the south of Russia, the Middle Belt, Trans-Urals, Omsk, Altai, where Germans once lived completely and keep living now. There was the Volga region, and there was a variant of the answer, where we are needed. 67% answered, we want to live where we are needed. This means that they are not freeloaders or loafers.
This is a very passionate position.
We want to live and work. And if we are not needed in the south, if the place is already occupied, then why should we stay there? We want to be where we are needed, with our lifestyle and our work. This is a very good result, which pleased us all, and I think we should go ahead with it. Of course, there is a category of people who said, it would be great if we could return to our ancestral homes. All those who once lived on the Volga and for whom the Volga Republic was their homeland left many songs and legends. I remember our old people, how they remembered the Volga with pain. What kind of flowers were there? What kind of watermelons and melons grew there? It was their homeland that they had to leave. I won't say for sure, but today it's a small number of people. Actually, hypothetically, it would be nice to restore our legal status. There is the Chechen Republic, there is Tatarstan, and there was the Volga Republic, which has not yet been legally restored. But we still have two more German autonomous regions, on the Volga and in the Altai territory.
Look, there is actually plenty of room on the Volga.
Omsk, I'm sorry, not the Volga, about Tomsk?
Omsk is okay, but I mean, if you go back to the Volga region, it's big, and it's not very densely populated. There are large cities like Nizhny Novgorod, but in general, I think anything is possible. Moreover, for example, I recall the Moldovan Republic, where, in fact, the Mordvins, the titular ethnic group, are not the majority, but they have their own legal unit. This is, relatively speaking, their home, with which they can associate themselves. Although it is clear that they live all over Russia, because that is how it has historically happened. Anyway, it is an interesting point that Germans want to live where they are needed. I'm sure that in Russia, people with energy, knowledge and skills are needed everywhere.
We are currently talking to all regions. I must say, not all regions clearly relate to such resettlement. I don't want to speculate on why right now. There are regions that tell us, sorry, we'll manage on our own. And I say, great. It's good that we can talk about it openly. Because it would be sad if we were stationed somewhere by federal decree, and then we would create some kind of hotbed of discontent. There are fears that we will come and be given benefits, and the locals will not. But we don't need any benefits. We've talked about this many times. We don't need any special preferences. Just let us move in and start working. All the subsidies and benefits that Russia has are unique. Believe me. The state provides so much assistance to hard-working, useful projects, for example, in rural areas. If you have proper approach, then you don't need more than that. Energy resources at the price of 4 euro cents. The only problem, of course, is the expensive loan. There is still a difficulty in moving the startup capital. The equipment is also not easy to transport here. It turns out that you have to start all over from scratch. And even if you have a lot of experience, know-how and best practices in everything, it will be still difficult to start from scratch without credit support. And this is not a preference, it's a leveling of chances, because the business located here is already present here. And if we come here, we bring losses with us, so we need to be somewhere on equal terms. We'll work off this money. It will be returned back in the form of taxes. In other words, it would be an ideal investment in the working people, of course. Don't praise yourself and your people. But you know, our collective farms in Kazakhstan were among the best. I traveled the world, saw where fate had scattered us. And for example, Brazil. The entire south of Brazil was built by the hands of Russian Germans. And it's radically different because there's no drug addiction, no drunks, no favelas, and no crime. They have high productivity and communication culture. We know how to do this, and we have proved this more than once in the history of Russia. After all, before the revolution, there were 3,500 German colonies in the Russian Empire, which made a huge contribution to its economy, not to mention military, engineering, medicine, and so on. Our two peoples have always been very closely connected, and mentally we are similar. I clearly feel and understand this, because I know the German mentality quite well. I'm half German, and I know what I see around me in my friends. I think it is connection between our two peoples that the Anglo-Saxon world fears, because whenever we were friends, there was prosperity. And whenever they managed to turn us against each other, the whole world suffered from it.
There were bloody wars that affected many.
Unfortunately, we are now on the verge of repeating the same project, and our enemies basically follow the same patterns. The only hope is that humanity has become more mature, and will not allow this. And we are working on that too.
You know, Waldemar, the Americans have a good saying. Although this nation is young, they think precisely in these logics. If the mechanism works well, why should we fix it? In other words, if previously the same scheme had produced good results in pitting nations against each other and weakening Europe, then why change it? So, indeed, we are now witnessing a repetition of many things that unfortunately have already happened in the past. And in this regard, since we've already proceeded to international relations and politics, let's talk a little about the alternative for Germany. This party is being watched quite closely in Russia, and it has significant popularity. We remember that during the last local elections in Germany, on the territory of the former GDR, many voted for the alternative for Germany. Actually, this part of German society, that is historically a little closer to us, has chosen an alternative for Germany. It is for this reason that a campaign has been launched to ban this party, because in the future it is seen as a threat that could challenge the current political elite, the ruling coalition, and the Merz party in particular, and Merz himself. How do you assess the current political landscape in Germany, and what are the current sentiments there?
Germany has never been in such a miserable state as it is now, since the Second World War. Statistics vary, but about 20% of small and medium-sized businesses, which is more than 600,000 enterprises, have ceased to exist or moved to other countries.
600,000. It's a huge figure, in fact.
Yes, it is. It is small and medium-sized businesses that bear the main tax burden. They will always find offshore companies, but they create jobs. And when it comes to tax obligations, businesses know how to bypass them. But small and medium-sized businesses are the milk cow, the backbone of which the entire German economy relied. We must say openly that all the prosperity and economic stability and competitiveness of the German economy were based on cheap energy resources.
The Russian ones.
Yeah, the Russian ones. I refer to the long-term contracts for $200 per 1,000 cubic meters of gas, which Russia offered to extend. But Germany abandoned these projects, we know under whose orders, thus destroying its economic foundation. Today, many companies went bankrupt, not because they performed worse or lost their leadership and technologies. They are just forced to use energy resources 4 times more expensive. Thus, they brought the chemical industry and the automobile companies to their knees. These companies and industries are the very tycoons who carried all this burden. We can recall what Merz said last week. It can be certainly regarded as bankruptcy, the declaration of state bankruptcy. Germany will never be the same again. It looks as if he had just realized it. It was evident 2 years ago.
Yeah, he mentioned lower social benefits.
Germany is no longer able to fulfill its obligations under social contracts for its population. But at the same time, they still support Ukraine and take billions of dollars in loans. It will be a burden for the future generations. Where will this money go? Why not stop spending money on things which are not in our interests, but in favor of some kind of political ambitions? They just have to clamp down on retired population now. There will be a social explosion, and the government will not last long. But there is nothing good about it. Another government will come, and if they don't change attitude about Russia, nothing will be fixed.
Can the alternative for Germany party eventually become a driving force in the near future and take on the job of clearing this mess?
It can and should be. because there is no other force on the political landscape right now that can do that. Well, the alternative for Germany, or briefly AfD party, is changing. They are not idle at all. When I became a German deputy, I was an idealist. Back then, AfD entered the German parliament for the first time in decades. There were 93 of us. In general, all of us had an academic education. Almost everyone had a university degree, and everyone was ideologically determined to save Germany. There aren't many people like that. They are getting fewer and fewer. The ideological foundation of this party is getting eroded. But I think they won't be able to turn it completely into a pro-Western force. Well, during the next parliamentary election, it's clear that AfD will need to get 51% of votes. Because due to the current political situation, no one will enter into coalition with AfD. Back in the days, they have said too many things which were really controversial. It will be really difficult for other parties to change their attitude, although it would probably be the most correct thing if a more or less conservative CDU united with AfD. However, CDU said they would rather die than do that. Many people say, oh, it's too difficult. No, it's simple. I used to joke, give me 6 months, the post of Chancellor and the majority in Parliament. Everything will fall into place. First of all, unconditional lifting of all sanctions and its recognition as an anti-popular method in politics. Non-political, not diplomatic, but anti-popular, because the sanctions imply that the country we have imposed sanctions upon will become impoverished. Children won't be getting enough food. It's a disaster. This only thing is enough to...
It's inhumane.
Inhumane! So no sanctions. We also need to carry out an audit. In Germany, there are lots of illegal refugees. We have legal refugees, it's absolutely fine, but there are also illegal ones. They constitute 70% of all refugees. Some people say, we can't round them up. How come? You pay them.
They come to get benefits, catch them if you want.
Go to any train station, there are lots of refugees in city centers. Get them in one station and check their IDs. If a person declined 3 job offers in a row, they came there to live on welfare. Get back all the benefits and send the illegal refugees back to their countries. Our country will save billions of euros and become much safer. Give a pay rise to those who want to work. That's it. It requires political will, a backbone. We don't need a careerist, but someone who thinks, and there are very few people like that, even an AfD.
So, the AfD may take the driver's seat in the near future, but it's not a fact that by that time the party will remain the same.
We've seen that many times. You saw what happened to Melanie, Italian Prime Minister. She used to be pro-Russian. Melanie won the elections fair and square. Then she went to Washington to curry favor with the Americans and came back a completely different person. She pursues a completely opposite policy. It's not like it was before. I hope that it won't happen to AfD. People vote for this party only because it advocates peace and has a normal, proper relationship with our biggest neighbor and partner. It won't be that simple for AfD to alter its policy. Even if they do, their voters will find it out. People have already realized many things that they didn't want to a year ago. In 2023, I was a pro-Russian rogue, but nowadays, all of those who stood against me are trying to reach out to me. They say that I was right.
They want you to come back?
Of course they do.
In AfD or politics in general?
I don't know about politics, but some manufacturers sought my help. And I said, guys, you're watching your fathers and grandfathers' businesses being ruined. You're rich, do something. Why do you stay silent? The government knows better. It's not as bad as you say, they answered. Today they know that the situation got much worse than I described. So now they ask me, in what country can we find cheap energy resources and tax rate from 6%? Could you tell us? We are ready to move. We've lost everything in Germany. Right now we have a choice. Either declare bankruptcy and lose what we have left, or move our businesses somewhere else. They're trying to contact me through my children, acquaintances. Some of them ask me directly.
Waldemar, thank you for this informative conversation. We'll continue in the following episodes of our podcast. This was Waldemar Herdt, chairman of the International Council of Russian Germans and former Bundestag member from the Alternative for Germany party, as well as me, Yuri Lindre. So, see you soon!
Thank you.
Zvezda Holding presents Dynamic Spectrum Talks now.